Let me ask you something real. Have you ever looked at someone's life and thought, they must have gotten lucky? Maybe they were born into the right family, maybe they just knew the right people, or maybe they just happened to be in the right place at the right time. Yeah, we've all thought that. I've thought it too. But here's the truth no one talks about enough. Life doesn't change because of luck. It doesn't change because of talent either. And it definitely doesn't change because you waited for the perfect moment. Life changes because you learn. And I don't mean going back to school or getting another degree. I'm talking about the kind of learning that you choose. The kind that happens when you say, instead of scrolling mindlessly for 20 minutes, I'm going to read 5 pages of a book that actually teaches me something. Or when you say, I'm tired of listening to the same playlist today. I'm listening to a podcast that feeds my brain. That kind of learning. It's quiet, it's personal, and it's powerful. You see, most people think growth happens in big, dramatic moments, a career breakthrough, a lucky investment, a life-changing connection. But the truth is the biggest breakthroughs start small. They start when you decide that today, just today, you're going to learn something new. Let me tell you a quick story about someone I know. We'll call him Mike. Mike used to work in a job he absolutely hated. You know the type, the kind of job where every day feels like a repeat of the last. Wake up, drag yourself in, count the minutes until you can leave. He kept saying, this just isn't the right time to make a change. I've got bills. I've got responsibilities. It's just not the right time. Sound familiar? But one day, Mike did something different. He didn't quit his job. He didn't move across the country. He didn't burn everything down and start over. He simply made one small commitment to himself. I'm going to learn one new thing every single day. Sometimes it was a 5-minute article. Sometimes a short video on a topic he was curious about. Sometimes it was a conversation with someone in an industry he admired. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't glamorous. But it was consistent. Fast forward 1 year later. Mike wasn't just in a new job. He was in a completely different industry. Leading a team. Doing work that actually inspired him. And it all started with that simple daily decision to keep learning. So let me ask you, what if you made that same decision? Not to quit everything. Not to make some big leap. But just to start learning again every single day. How different would your life look a year from now? Here's what I want you to understand. Every time you learn something new, no matter how small, you unlock a new possibility. A new skill. A new thought. A new way of looking at your life. And over time, those small shifts, they compound. They snowball into something massive. See, the real tragedy isn't people failing. It's people staying the same. Living the same year over and over again and calling it a life. And most of the time, it's not because they don't want to grow. It's because they're waiting for the right time. They're waiting for permission. They're waiting to feel ready. But here's the truth. You don't need permission to learn. You don't need a degree. You don't need someone to hand you a syllabus. You just need curiosity and a little bit of commitment. We live in the most information-rich era in history. There are free podcasts, free books, free YouTube videos like this one, all designed to help you grow. And yet, so many of us are starving our minds. Think about it like this. If you stopped eating for 3 days, your body would feel weak, right? But if you stop feeding your mind, what happens? You get stuck. You lose momentum. Your creativity dries up. You start repeating the same mistakes over and over again. That's not a life of growth. That's survival. But when you feed your mind, even just for 15 minutes a day, you come alive again. That's the shift I want you to make. Don't wait for the right time. Don't wait until you have it all figured out. Just start learning. Start growing. Start becoming. Because the truth is this. Your life doesn't change because you got lucky. It changes because you showed up every single day and chose to learn something that made you better than yesterday. So if you're ready to start building that kind of life, stick around, because in the next part of this video, we're diving into exactly how to turn this small habit into the most powerful force for transformation in your entire life. Let's grow. Let's talk about something that changes, lives quietly, and yet most people overlook it. It's not talent. It's not luck. It's not even hard work, though that matters too. No, the real game changer. Daily learning. Because here's a truth most people never hear growing up. Success doesn't go to the person who shouts the loudest. It goes to the person who knows more and knows how to use it. Let me break this down. We live in a world that rewards value, not effort alone, not seniority. Value. You don't get paid more because you've been in your job for 10 years. You get paid more because you bring more value to the table. And where does that value come from? Knowledge, skill, growth. Think about the people you look up to in business, in leadership, even in your personal life. They didn't wait for someone to notice them. They didn't sit back and hope their potential would magically shine through. They did the work. They learned. They grew. And as they grew, their value increased and so did their opportunities. Here's the pattern I've seen over and over again in my own life and the lives of others. There are two kinds of people in this world. The first type says, I already know enough. They get comfortable. They stop asking questions. They stop learning. And slowly they start to fade. Their skills get outdated. Their thinking becomes rigid. And the world moves forward without them. The second type says, there's always more to learn. They stay curious. They read. They listen. They observe. They ask questions even when it makes them uncomfortable. And you know what happens? They grow. They evolve. They become the ones everyone looks to for leadership, solutions, and insight. Let me give you a real-world example. A few years ago, I worked with two guys in the same department. Same company. Same starting position. Let's call them Jake and Sam. Jake was talented, no doubt about it. But he had this mindset, I already know what I need. I just need someone to give me a chance. Sam, on the other hand, didn't assume anything. He made a decision early on. I'm going to learn something new every single week, even if no one's watching. Fast forward 2 years, Jake was still in the same role, frustrated, feeling invisible. Sam, he was leading a team. He was earning double what he started with, not because he was louder, not because he got lucky, but because he kept learning. And that's the difference. The most successful people aren't the ones who coast. They're the ones who keep growing no matter how much they already know. And I know maybe you're thinking, but I don't have time to learn every day. Life is already full. Totally get it. But here's the secret. You don't need hours. You need intention. 10 minutes with a good book. 15 minutes of a podcast on your drive to work. Asking one better question in a meeting instead of zoning out. That's learning. That's momentum. And when you do that every day, it compounds. You don't just learn more. You become more. You start seeing problems differently. You start speaking with more clarity. You start walking into rooms with a quiet confidence because you know you've invested in yourself. So let me ask you something. Which kind of person do you want to be? The one who says, I already know enough, or the one who says, I'm just getting started? Because here's the truth. Your future doesn't care how long you've been working. It cares how much value you bring. And value comes from growth. Growth comes from learning. Every single day. It doesn't have to be big. It doesn't have to be perfect. But it does have to be consistent. If you're tired of feeling stuck, if you're wondering why your career isn't moving, if you feel like people are passing you by, look at your learning habits. When was the last time you fed your mind? When was the last time you challenged what you thought you knew? Because that's where the breakthrough starts, not in some magical opportunity, but in the daily decision to keep learning. One page, one idea, one lesson at a time. Let me leave you with this. You don't rise by being lucky. You rise by becoming more valuable. And the easiest way to become more valuable, learn something today that you didn't know yesterday. So if you're serious about building a life that's not just successful, but fulfilling, exciting, meaningful, then start with this simple question. What can I learn today that moves me forward? And once you answer that, don't just think about it. Do it. Because learning isn't something that happens to you. It's something you choose. And once you choose it daily, that's when your life starts to change. Let's grow. Let's dive deeper into something that could change your life, not just in your career, but in your confidence, your focus, and your ability to handle the unexpected. And it all starts with this one habit: learning consistently. Because learning isn't just about collecting information. It's about transformation. It changes the way you think. It strengthens your ability to lead. It prepares you to handle challenges not with panic, but with purpose. Let's break this down. Learning builds unshakable confidence. Here's something you might not hear often. Confidence doesn't come from pretending to know everything. It comes from doing the work to actually understand it. You ever been in a room where someone walks in, and they're not loud, but you just trust what they say? That's not charisma. That's clarity. See, when you're well-informed, when you've taken the time to learn deeply, you stop second-guessing yourself. You stop asking for validation on every decision. You make moves with confidence because you understand what you're doing and why. Knowledge silences the inner doubt. It gives you language to express your thoughts clearly. It gives you perspective to solve problems without fear. Let me ask you this. Have you ever avoided speaking up in a meeting because you weren't 100% sure you were right? That hesitation? It doesn't come from lack of talent. It comes from a lack of certainty, the kind of certainty that's built through daily learning. Because when you learn consistently, something amazing happens. You don't just know more, you trust yourself more. And when you trust yourself, you lead. Not by position, not by title, but by presence. Learning keeps your mind sharp and focused. We live in a world that's constantly trying to hijack your attention. Social media, breaking news, notifications, infinite scrolling. And with all that noise, it's getting harder and harder to think clearly. But intentional learning is like mental weightlifting. It trains your brain to focus again, to stay sharp, to resist the distractions that pull so many people off track. Let me give you an example. I had a friend who said, "I just feel foggy all the time. Like I'm busy, but I'm not moving forward." We looked at her daily routine. Guess what? Every spare minute was filled with quick dopamine hits, TikTok, breaking news, endless scrolling. So she made a small change. Each morning, before checking anything else, she read 10 pages of a book that challenged her thinking. Not fluff, but real content that fed her mind. After 2 weeks, she told me, "I feel like I've woken up again. I'm thinking clearer. I'm making better choices. I'm not reacting, I'm responding." That's the power of daily learning. It rewires your brain to focus. It strengthens your mental clarity. It helps you stay calm when everyone else is spiraling. Because when you're feeding your mind, you're also fortifying it. Learning prepares you for the unexpected. Let's be honest, life doesn't always go according to plan. Jobs change. Relationships shift. The world throws curveballs sometimes out of nowhere. So the question isn't, will life surprise you? It's, will you be ready when it does? And here's the thing. The more you learn, the more prepared you become. When you build the habit of learning every day, you're not just gathering trivia. You're building a mental toolbox. So when life gets messy, instead of breaking down, you break it down. You don't panic, you problem solve. You don't freeze, you adapt. You don't collapse, you create a new path. I once heard someone say, "The strongest trees aren't the ones with the biggest trunks. They're the ones with the deepest roots." Daily learning deepens your roots. So when the storm comes, and it will, you bend, but you don't break. Here's a real story. During the pandemic, a small business owner I knew lost almost all his income overnight. But instead of waiting, he started learning about digital marketing, something he never had time for before. Within 6 months, he pivoted his business online and created a new income stream. Today, he's more successful than before the crisis. Why? Because he had trained himself to adapt, to learn quickly, to act wisely. That kind of resilience doesn't come from talent. It comes from a mind that's ready because it's been learning all along. Let's bring this home. So what do we do with this? Simple. If you want more confidence, learn. If you want to stay sharp, learn. If you want to be ready for anything, learn. Not once. Not when it's convenient. Every day. Because small learning habits lead to massive life upgrades. Here's your challenge. For the next 7 days, set aside just 15 minutes a day. Pick something meaningful. A book, a podcast, an article, a YouTube video like this one. And don't just consume it. Reflect on it. Apply it. Share it. Because the goal isn't just to know more. It's to become more. Your future self will thank you. Let's grow. Let's talk about something that quietly shapes every single part of your life. Your relationships, your career, your finances, even your peace of mind. It's your ability to make decisions. Now I know, that might sound obvious. Of course decisions matter, right? But here's the deeper truth most people never stop to consider. The quality of your decisions is directly tied to the quality of what you know. Think about that for a second. We all want to make better choices to choose the right job, the right partner, the right path. But what if the missing piece isn't more time or more motivation? What if it's simply better information? Let me share a story that hits this point home. A good friend of mine, we'll call him Ryan, had two job offers. One paid more, flashier title. The other, lower salary, but came with mentorship, a great team culture, and long-term growth potential. He was torn. Now, 5 years ago, he would have chased the money. No question. Because that's what most of us are taught to do, follow the paycheck. But this time, Ryan took a step back. He started reading about career development, long-term wealth building, and leadership. He had conversations with people further down the path. And what he realized was simple. The lower-paying job was actually the better investment, not for today, but for tomorrow. He took it. Fast forward 3 years, not only is he making more than the original higher-paying offer, he's now leading a division at the company. And more importantly, he loves what he does. That's what learning does. It doesn't just fill your head with facts. It gives you clarity. It helps you see the long game. It teaches you to evaluate not just what looks good now, but what pays off later. Better knowledge leads to better choices. Let me ask you something. Have you ever made a decision you regretted not because you were careless, but because you just didn't know any better at the time? You trusted the wrong person. You took a job that drained you. You spent money on something that seemed smart until it wasn't. And months, maybe years later, you find yourself saying, "If I knew then what I know now." We've all been there. But here's the good news. You don't have to keep repeating that sentence. You can choose to know more starting today. Because knowledge isn't just power. It's preparation. It's what helps you slow down just long enough to ask better questions, to weigh your options with more perspective, to stop rushing into decisions and start building them on solid ground. Knowledge creates options. Options create confidence. Here's something I've learned from watching people who always seem calm in chaos. They don't have fewer problems. They just have more options. And where do options come from? Knowledge. When you understand your choices, when you know how to think critically, compare outcomes, and anticipate consequences, you stop feeling boxed in. You stop reacting from fear or confusion. You start deciding with confidence. Let's break this down practically. You want to improve your finances? You don't just need more income. You need to learn how money works, budgeting, investing, debt, mindset. You want to grow your relationship? You don't just need more love. You need to learn how to communicate, resolve conflict, set boundaries. You want to lead better. You don't just need authority. You need to understand people, how they're wired, what motivates them. Every area of your life improves when you know more about it. Because here's the thing. Confidence doesn't come from winging it. It comes from wisdom. And wisdom? That's what learning builds over time. Learning reduces regret. One of the hardest feelings in life is looking back and thinking, "I should have known better." But here's what's even harder. Realizing you could have known better if you had just taken the time to learn. That's not to shame you. We're all doing the best we can with the tools we have. But the moment you realize you can choose better tools, that's the moment your life starts to shift. Because here's the truth. Life doesn't punish you for being curious. It rewards you with fewer regrets, with better timing, with smarter moves, and with a future that actually reflects your intention, not just your habits. Final thought. Learn before you leap. Let me challenge you with a mindset shift. Before your next big decision, don't rush. Don't guess. Don't assume. Learn. Ask, what am I missing? Who can I learn from before I act? What knowledge would make this choice easier, wiser, or more aligned? Even just 15 minutes of learning, reading an article, listening to a podcast, asking a mentor, could save you months, even years of frustration. Because here's the deal. Every good decision starts with good information. And every smart move is built on what you choose to know. So if you want to start making better decisions, Decisions that actually move your life forward. Then, make this one decision first. Commit to learning every single day. Because the smarter you are, the clearer you think. The clearer you think, the better you choose. And the better you choose, the better life becomes. Let's grow. Let's be real for a moment. Life comes with problems. No matter how successful, how smart, or how careful you are, challenges are part of the deal. Financial stress, relationship issues, health scares, career setbacks, feeling stuck, overwhelmed, or like nothing's moving forward. Sound familiar? But here's a truth that most people overlook. There is no such thing as an unsolvable problem. Only problems you don't fully understand yet. Let that sink in for a second. Most of the time, what keeps us stuck isn't the size of the problem. It's how we see it. Or more accurately, how little we understand it. Understanding is the first step to solving. Let me give you a real-world example. A friend of mine, we'll call her Amanda, was drowning in credit card debt. She kept saying things like, "I just need to make more money," or, "If I could pick up a second job, I'd be fine." But here's the thing, Amanda was already exhausted, working full-time, barely sleeping. So adding more hustle wasn't the answer. One day, she stumbled on a personal finance podcast totally by accident. That episode changed her life. She didn't get a raise. She didn't win the lottery. What she did was this. She learned how credit card interest actually works. She learned how to budget, not just track spending, but assign a purpose to every dollar. She learned about the debt snowball method and how to build momentum by tackling one card at a time. That knowledge, it gave her power. Fast forward a year later, she was completely debt-free. Not because she worked harder, but because she understood the problem clearly enough to solve it. And that's the magic of learning. The more you understand a problem, the more it shrinks. Not because it disappears, but because you become bigger than it. Without learning, you only treat the symptoms. Here's the trap most people fall into. They don't solve problems. They just manage them. They treat the surface, but never get to the root. Your burned out gives, so you take a weekend off. You feel lost in your career gives, so you update your resume. You fight with your partner gives, so you take a break. And sure, sometimes those things help temporarily. But then what? The problem comes back. And it's usually worse. Why? Because when you don't understand what's really causing the issue, you're just putting a bandage on something that needs surgery. Knowledge is leverage. Learning real, intentional, consistent learning gives you something that nothing else can. Leverage. It's what allows you to fix things at the root, to stop wasting time on surface-level strategies that only delay the pain, and instead focus on actual solutions. Let's say you're constantly feeling anxious and overwhelmed. You've tried the apps, you've done the bubble baths, but nothing sticks. Have you ever stopped to learn what anxiety actually is? How it forms? What triggers it biologically, mentally, emotionally? When you do, suddenly, you're not a victim of your emotions anymore. You're a student of them. And students eventually become masters. Or maybe you're a business owner struggling with inconsistent income. Sales are up and down. You blame the market, the clients, the economy. But then you dive into a book on customer psychology. You learn about sales funnels. You study pricing strategy. Now you don't just feel the pressure. You understand the system behind it. You can adjust. You can adapt. You're no longer reacting, you're responding strategically. That's leverage. That's the difference between being stuck and moving forward with confidence. Problems aren't roadblocks, they're teachers. Here's a shift that changed my life. Every problem is a teacher in disguise. Some people run from problems. Some people avoid them. Some people blame others for them. But the ones who grow, they ask better questions. What is this trying to teach me? What am I not seeing yet? What can I learn from this so it doesn't keep repeating? That's how you break cycles. That's how you stop living the same year over and over again. Learning gives you awareness. And awareness is what transforms pain into progress. Final thought, learn through the problem, not around it. Look, I don't know what challenge you're facing right now. Maybe it's a decision you don't know how to make. Maybe it's a pattern that keeps showing up in your life. Maybe it's a deep frustration that you haven't been able to shake for years. Whatever it is, here's my invitation to you. Instead of trying to escape the problem, learn your way through it. Read a book on the topic. Listen to someone who's been through it and come out the other side. Ask questions. Join communities. Reflect deeply. Because I promise you this, you are not stuck because you're broken. You're stuck because there's something you haven't learned yet. And once you learn it, your path will open up in ways you never imagined. To sum it up, there's no problem too big, just problems not yet understood. Learning helps you stop treating symptoms and start solving roots. Knowledge gives you the leverage to change, lead, and rise above. The faster you learn, the faster you solve, and the stronger you become. So next time you face something hard, don't just ask, why me? Ask, what do I need to learn to overcome this? Because the truth is you're one insight away from your next breakthrough. Let's grow. Let me tell you something that's become more and more true the older I get. Life has a funny way of rewarding those who never stop learning. And I'm not just talking about getting a certificate or a job promotion. I'm talking about real, meaningful rewards, new opportunities, deeper relationships, greater self-awareness, and perhaps most importantly, a life that feels aligned with who you really are. Because here's the deal. People who keep learning are the ones who keep growing. And people who keep growing are the ones life can trust with more. So let's talk about 3 powerful ways learning rewards you in ways you might not even expect. Reward 1. Opportunities start coming to you. You ever wonder why some people always seem to get lucky? Why they get promoted, chosen, invited into rooms you didn't even know existed? It's not always about who they know. It's about who they become. People who are constantly learning are constantly adding value. They stay sharp. They stay curious. They stay adaptable. And when you become the kind of person who brings insight, perspective, and solutions, people notice. They start trusting you with more. They start calling you when they need someone dependable. They start saying, you know what? I want you on this project. I want you in this room. Because here's what most people don't realize. The best opportunities in life don't go to the smartest person. They go to the most valuable one. And value? That comes from learning. I've seen it firsthand. A friend of mine, not the most outgoing, not the loudest, just quietly kept learning. Books, podcasts, asking questions. Always growing. One day, out of the blue, her boss pulled her into a leadership team meeting. Not because she asked, but because she was ready. Her knowledge spoke louder than any resume ever could. Reward 2. Your relationships get better, deeper, stronger, realer. Let's talk about something that doesn't get mentioned enough when we talk about learning. The more you learn, the better you connect with people. Think about it. When you learn how to communicate better, when you understand human behavior, emotional intelligence, psychology, when you learn to listen more than you speak, your relationships start to shift in a beautiful way. You stop needing to always be right. You start becoming more present. You ask better questions. You understand what's not being said. And guess what? People feel it. They feel seen, heard, understood. And that creates connection, the kind that lasts. I've seen marriages heal, friendships deepen, even business partnerships flourish. Not because of some big fix, but because one person decided to learn how to show up better. If your relationships feel surface level, if you keep having the same arguments, don't just blame the other person. Ask yourself, what can I learn about communication that I've been missing? What skill could I develop that would bring us closer, not further apart? Because learning isn't just about knowledge, it's about connection. And connection is what makes life feel truly fulfilling. Reward 3. You understand yourself deeply. Here's maybe the biggest reward of all. Learning helps you know who you really are. So many of us go through life chasing what other people expect, trying to meet someone else's definition of success, trying to fit into a mold that doesn't even feel right. But when you commit to learning, especially about yourself, you start to see things clearly. You begin asking, what do I actually want? What energizes me and what drains me? What values do I want to live by, not because someone told me to, but because they're mine? That kind of self-awareness, it's priceless. It gives you permission to stop chasing and start aligning, to stop comparing and start becoming, to stop living someone else's life and start living your own. I remember when I finally started reading about personality, motivation, purpose, emotional habits. It was like looking in a mirror for the first time. I realized I had been building a life based on what I thought I should do, not what I was born to do. That shift didn't happen overnight, but day by day, the learning peeled back the layers until I found something real underneath myself. And from there, everything changed. Final thought: life rewards growth, not comfort. If you've made it this far in the video, let me just say this: you're already the kind of person who's hungry to grow, to learn, to build a better version of yourself. And that's something to celebrate, because this isn't about being perfect. It's not about knowing everything. It's about choosing to stay open every single day. Because when you stay open, opportunities will find you, relationships will deepen, and most importantly, you'll start living a life that feels like yours. So here's your reminder: keep learning, keep asking questions, keep challenging what you think you know. Because life doesn't reward the person who knows it all. It rewards the person who never stops becoming. Let's grow. Let's get honest for a moment. We've talked about how learning builds confidence, how it sharpens your mind, how it helps you make better decisions and solve real problems. But here's the question that matters most: what does it look like to apply what you learn in real life? Because reading a book is great. Listening to a podcast, awesome. But if that knowledge just sits in your head and never turns into action, then what's the point? So let's talk about how powerful learning becomes when you actually use it. And I want to show you this through 3 real people you already know who used learning, not just as something to admire, but as fuel to build something extraordinary. 1. Oprah Winfrey, daily reader, lifelong learner. Let's start with someone who needs no introduction: Oprah Winfrey. Now, most people know Oprah for her success, the empire, the interviews, the influence. But what fewer people talk about is how deeply committed she is to daily learning. Oprah once said, "Books were my pass to personal freedom." She reads every single day, and not just for entertainment, but for growth, for understanding, for wisdom. She credits much of her self-awareness, empathy, and ability to connect with people to what she's learned from reading thousands of stories and perspectives beyond her own. And here's the thing: Oprah didn't wait until she was successful to start learning. She was learning when no one knew her name. She was growing when no one was watching. That's what makes her powerful. Not just what she knows, but how she applies it. Every conversation she leads, every message she shares, comes from years of intentional, consistent learning. So ask yourself, what would happen if you spent just 15 minutes a day feeding your mind like she does? 2. Elon Musk, learning what he didn't know. Next up, Elon Musk. Love him or hate him, one thing is undeniable: the man is a relentless learner. Did you know that Elon didn't go to school for rocket science? He didn't graduate with an aerospace engineering degree. He wasn't qualified by the traditional system to build rockets. So how did he do it? He read books, he asked questions, he talked to experts, and he never stopped learning. He once said, "I read a lot of books and talked to a lot of people to learn how to build rockets." And then he built SpaceX. Think about that for a moment. Most people stop before they even start. They say things like, "I don't know enough. I didn't go to school for this. I'm not qualified." But Elon flipped that mindset. He didn't wait to become an expert. He learned his way into expertise. So what's stopping you from doing the same? You might not want to launch rockets, but maybe you want to start a business, write a book, change careers, build something that matters. You don't need a fancy degree. You need commitment to growth. 3. Sarah Blakely, learning through failure and action. Now let's talk about Sarah Blakely, the founder of Spanx and one of the most inspiring self-made billionaires out there. What's fascinating about Sarah? She didn't have a background in fashion. She didn't go to business school. She didn't come from money. But what she did have: a willingness to learn through doing and through failing. Sarah had an idea. She tested it. She failed. She adapted. She kept going. She used trial and error as her teacher. When something didn't work, she didn't give up. She asked, "What can I learn from this?" Then she tried again, smarter. That's real learning. Not just what you study, but how you grow through experience, through action, through mistakes. So if you've been telling yourself, I need more time, more confidence, more credentials. Let Sarah be your reminder. You don't need to know everything. You just need to be willing to learn and to move anyway. The common thread: learn plus act. What do Oprah, Elon, and Sarah have in common? They didn't wait until they were ready. They didn't wait until they had it all figured out. They learned as they went. They took in information. They applied it. They failed. They adjusted. They grew. And that's what changed everything. Real growth doesn't come from just knowing. It comes from applying what you know even when it's scary. So here's the question for you. What's one thing you've learned recently that you haven't acted on yet? Maybe it's a new idea. Maybe it's a mindset shift. Maybe it's a piece of advice that hit you right in the heart. Now ask yourself, what's one step I can take to live this out today? Because the world doesn't change because we know more. It changes when we do more with what we know. Final thought: start now, not someday. Let's wrap this up with one powerful reminder. You don't have to be an expert to begin. You just have to be willing to learn and to start before you feel ready. Whether you want to lead, create, heal, grow, or reinvent your life, it starts with one small decision. Learn something today. Apply it in some small way. And keep doing that every single day. That's how Oprah became Oprah. That's how Elon launched rockets. That's how Sarah built a billion-dollar brand. And that's how you'll build the life you're meant to live, one lesson, one action, one bold step at a time. Let's grow. Let's bring it all home. After everything we've explored: the power of learning, how it builds confidence, sharpens your mind, helps you make better decisions, solve real problems, attract opportunities, build better relationships, and understand yourself on a whole new level. There's one core truth that ties it all together. We don't learn just to know more. We learn to live better. That's the purpose. That's the mission. That's the real reward. Because let's be honest, the world is full of people who know a lot, but still feel stuck, still feel small, still keep repeating the same old mistakes. Why? Because knowledge without action is just noise. But knowledge applied? That's transformation. Daily learning equals daily momentum. Let me ask you something. How would your life change if, starting today, you learned something meaningful every single day? Not huge, not overwhelming, just 15 to 30 minutes a day. Something that fuels your mind, sharpens your focus, improves your relationships, boosts your confidence, or challenges the way you see yourself and the world. What would that do for your mindset, your mood, your money, your decisions? Because here's the thing. Daily learning creates momentum, and momentum creates results. Every day you learn something new, no matter how small, you become just a little more capable, a little more aware, a little more ready. And over time, that adds up. Big time. No learning equals same life on repeat. Let's flip it for a second. What happens when you don't keep learning? It's simple. You stop growing. You lose clarity. You lose energy. You start repeating the same frustrations, making the same mistakes, living the same year over and over again, just with a new calendar. You feel stuck not because you're lazy or incapable, but because your thinking hasn't been refreshed. And that's what learning does. It refreshes your perspective. It rewires your mindset. It reactivates your growth. You stop surviving and start creating your life again. Learning expands thinking, gives better thinking, expands life. Everything you want in life starts with one thing: how you think. And how you think is shaped by what you know and what you choose to keep learning. Want better decisions? Learn better strategies. Want better habits? Learn how behavior works. Want better relationships? Learn how to listen and communicate. Want to change your life? Learn how to change your thinking. Learning expands your thinking, and expanded thinking expands your life. Every powerful shift begins there. The 30-day challenge: start small. Stay consistent. So if you're serious about change, real change, here's your next move. Try this 30-day challenge. Every day, for the next 30 days, commit to learning something for just 15 to 30 minutes. It could be reading a book on personal growth, listening to a podcast on leadership or mindset, watching a video like this one, having a meaningful conversation with someone who inspires you, reflecting through journaling or writing. The method doesn't matter as much as the habit. And after 30 days, you'll think clearer, You'll feel stronger. You'll make decisions with more confidence. You'll speak with more clarity. You'll live with more purpose. Not because the world changed, but because you did. Final thought, you're not here just to get by, you're here to grow. Let me leave you with this. You weren't born just to drift through life, waiting for things to happen. You're here to grow, to rise, to stretch into your full potential. And learning is the bridge to get there. So don't wait until life forces you to change. Don't wait for the breakdown, the burnout, the crisis. Choose to grow now. Feed your mind daily. Take responsibility for your future, one small lesson at a time. Because when you commit to learning every day, you're not just adding knowledge. You're building a stronger you, a wiser you, a more fulfilled you. Remember, you don't need to be perfect. You just need to stay curious and keep going. Let's grow.